Viewer discretion advised.
You know, I thought we'd have a couple of years like doing this and then it would fizzle out.
Wes Borland was living the rock star dream. He had platinum records, sold out arenas, MTV saturation, and magazine covers. And he threw it all away, not because of scandals or self-destruction, but simply because he couldn't stand faking it.
You know, I couldn't listen to those songs. I couldn't really be proud of what I was doing and stand completely behind it.
He walked out of Limp Bizkit when it was one of the biggest bands in the world.
Limp Bizkit was like culturally phenomenal level. Wow.
And he spent the rest of his career chasing absurd ideas for the sake of art.
I think it's a mistake to stick to something because it's easy.
This is the story of Wes Borland. Wesley Loudon Borland was born on February 7th, 1975 in Richmond, Virginia.
It's wonderful to be with you today and on many previous Sundays.
His dad was a Presbyterian minister, which meant the family never stayed in one place for long. From southern church towns to cold New England suburbs, they were always chasing God's next assignment.
Notice that this blasphemy against the Holy Spirit teaching of Jesus.
My dad was a Presbyterian minister, so we moved all over the place. I don't really have like a hometown. We were always moving around.
I didn't know that your dad was a minister.
Yeah.
That's great. So you were a very religious upbringing, I would imagine?
Yes, until I realized when I got older that I went, oh, this is like a fairy tale. But
By the time Wes hit his teens, his family landed in Jacksonville, Florida, where he enrolled in a local school of the arts.
We just moved from Nashville to Jacksonville, Florida. There was a school of the arts there. He was at a new church.
Even though Wes was raised in a religious home, his parents weren't strict about it. They gave him space to explore. And while some kids found inspiration in church hymns, Wes found his in horror movies. The visuals, the tension, the imagination, they sparked something in him.
Loved horror movies, and sculpture was like, okay, this can naturally take me into, doing creature effects or special effects in some way.
By now, it should be obvious that, like most of us, Wes grew up loving heavy music.
I love metal, but I make fun of it at the same time, but I love it.
When little Wes asked to see Judas Priest or Megadeth live, his dad didn't say no. Instead, he went with him. Picture it, a Presbyterian minister standing among leather jackets and flying hair, just making sure his son was safe. Might seem like a small moment, but it says a lot about how supportive Wes's family was. At 12, Wes took guitar lessons as a hobby.
And I was listening to like the Misfits and Black Flag and Minor Threat and Circle Jerks and Subhumans and Dead Kennedys and The Damned and all of that. And that's when I also started playing guitar around that age, like 12. And then my next door neighbor gave me the tape Kill 'Em All. And that's the first time I heard like riffs and, like thrash music and went, oh, this changes everything.
Funny thing is, music wasn't even the main act for Wes Borland. It was the side quest. His real passion was art, sculpting, painting, creating things he could actually touch.
So yeah, when I went to a high school of the arts for like fame or whatever for sculpture, and I was going to be a painter. I was going to paint, but I liked the sculpture teacher better. He was this funny guy named Mr. Hatcher, and anything you asked him for, he'd go, "Oh, that's $2. Everything was $2." So I was like, "Yeah, I'm not gonna get yelled at by Miss Ebersol. I'm gonna go to Mr. Hatcher's class." So.
But by 17, his guitar hobby turned into a weird project he put together with his younger brother, Scott. A little band they called Goat Slayer, where they played experimental music and pushed every boundary they could.
Goat Slayer started as like, we would make a record with like an improvisational record every night. You know, between 8 and 10 hours, we'd make a record, but we would smoke terrible weed.
And we also raided the dumpster at the gas station up the street from us and found all this expired like chewing tobacco. So we were like chewing like expired chewing tobacco. We were savages. It's fine. But so then we would get all this stuff and just try to get as jacked up as possible on all our homemade and stolen from dumpster paraphernalia and then make funny records.
That mix of metal riffs, jokes, and pure weirdness never left him. Wes didn't care about being famous or polished. He just wanted to make wild, creative stuff and have fun doing it, even if it made people raise an eyebrow.
Because we were really big fans of the band Ween. I don't know if you know who
Ween. I know.
Yeah, so we were really big fans of Ween, and we just wanted to make like hilarious records that were funny to us while we were like high and, you know, just like going crazy.
In the mid-1990s, Jacksonville's music scene was small but hungry. That's where a new band called Limp Bizkit started making noise, literally. Much of their early fame started at a small Jacksonville club called the Milk Bar, where word spread fast. At the same time, Wes's band Goat Slayer was playing those same small Jacksonville clubs. That's where he met Fred Durst.
My band had played with Fred's band, and my band was a three-piece, and I was like the singer, guitar player, and then I saw Fred, and I was like, that's the best frontman I've ever seen in my life. Like, I remember the first time I ever saw him and was just blown away.
Fred Durst was the kind of frontman who could change the entire mood of a room in seconds. Loud, confident, and while imperfect, maniacally driven by his own vision.
Limp Bizkit was sort of made up of all the people in bands who had gone on to do other things. Like, they were like, I don't want to do this. I want to go work for my dad's lawn business, or, you know, basically moving on. We were the remnants of bands that were in town that kind of still wanted to try.
You were like the discarded pieces.
Yeah,
Aww.
discarded. Well, no, we were like the only remaining thing. Everything else had fallen away.
You were just the leftovers.
Correct.
You know, I got this idea for this band I want to do, and I had a bass player. After me and Sam been jamming around and messing around for a bit, you know, I started looking around for other players and things, and Sam said, well, you know, my cousin John's a killer drummer. He's a jazz drummer. He should jam with us. And I said, well, jazz would be great because it'll give us that kind of beat we want, you know, that kind of, you know, that swag. And, you know, so me, John, and Sam are jamming in Sam's garage. I'm playing the guitar at the time and kind of rapping and singing, and, you know, I can't really play guitar well, so it's tuned to drop D, and I'm one finger noodling it. And
Wes already had a loose connection to Limp Bizkit through John Otto, who attended his same art school.
The drummer, John, was a percussionist at my school, so we know each other through that. And then Sam and John's families, they were those families that you grow up together and call each other cousins, even though you're not.
Right. Yeah.
So it was that kind of thing.
And while Fred had the vision, he needed a guitarist who could actually make it sound good. So Otto recommended Wes, who auditioned and immediately stood out. He played with an unorthodox, almost alien style that didn't fit the typical guitar hero mold.
It seems like a lot of your riffs are more like percussive tapping ways, sort of.
That comes from just being obsessed with Les Claypool from Primus and trying to like attack the guitar like a bass. I've always liked the bass more as an instrument than guitar, but I ended up being a guitar player for some reason.
But when he jammed with Limp Bizkit, it worked perfectly. So by 1994, Wes was officially one of the band.
The realm I exist in Bizkit is not to be a connection with the audience. I'm there to freak them out. You know, I'm there to be a satellite to what Fred is accomplishing by connecting.
Limp Bizkit played any show they could book. But as you already know, those sweaty Florida clubs were just the beginning. They didn't know it yet, but they were about to blow up. And Wes Borland, this weird creative kid, was their secret weapon. In the early days, Limp Bizkit wasn't polished, but it was interesting, and in a sea of samey local bands, that counted for a lot. In their early shows, Wes's younger brother, Scott, tagged along and stood behind a keyboard, adding moody, almost eerie layers to the music. Not everybody knows this, but for a moment, both the Borland brothers were part of the band.
My brother was originally in Limp Bizkit too on keyboards.
But as Limp Bizkit's sound got heavier and more focused on riffs and big drums, Scott's keyboards didn't really fit anymore, so he bowed out amicably. However, Wes wasn't sure he liked where the band was going. So before things got too serious, he left as well.
Egos and just like different ideas of what the band should be. I was like, no, I don't want to do this. And went back like working at a coffee shop.
Don't forget that at the time, for Wes, playing in a band wasn't a serious thing to begin with.
You know, I thought we'd have a couple of years or a few years of like doing this, and then it would fizzle out, and then I'd go, oh, that's when I'll go to art school, and like, because my whole thing was I wanted to be, I wanted to do like monster makeup and special effects in movies. I wanted to be.
So that's obviously where that inspiration for your stage look comes from. Gotcha.
Yeah, absolutely, yes.
Meanwhile, Fred Durst was out there hustling like a man possessed. He was shoving demo tapes into tattoo shops, skate parks, anywhere with loud music and questionable hygiene. He stalked Ross Robinson, the guy who produced Korn's first record, and practically begged him to listen. And then one night while Korn was playing in a club in Jacksonville, Fred got a chance to talk to them. According to lore, he offered to tattoo them for free and used the moment to hand them a demo. It was a desperate move, but it worked.
Limp Bizkit. Limp Bizkit is a band that you're going to start hearing a lot about.
Say that again?
Limp Bizkit.
Korn actually liked the demo and helped them get signed.
And they gave us a demo tape, and it was really good, but they still needed to work out some kinks. Right. And then Ross Robinson is actually producing the record right now.
Right.
It's going to be really good.
So by 1996, Limp Bizkit headed into the legendary Indigo Ranch Studios with producer Ross Robinson to record their first album. And by now, Wes had changed his mind and rejoined the band. During this period, DJ Lethal also joined the band and brought a whole new element to their sound, scratching, samples, and the kind of hip-hop vibe you couldn't get from guitars alone.
It's a hip-hop world right now, and that's the way it is. And I think if you're in a rock band and you're bringing hip-hop into rock music, you really need to have hip-hop as part of you really need to have the swing and really pull it off for real, you know what I mean? Instead of just some singer in a rock band just going, I'm gonna rap, and they're rapping, or some hip-hop band going, hey man, we're gonna put some heavy guitars in here because we're just gonna put some rock music in. That's bullshit. So
their first album, $3 Bill Y'all, came out in 1997. At first, people barely noticed, but Limp Bizkit didn't sit still and toured nonstop. Small clubs, rough venues, underground festivals, anything they could get.
The spectacle of what happens at our live shows and what used to happen at the really big ones was just upsetting and exciting at the same time. And it was just like, wow, this is really happening. This is chaos. This is like a riot is happening inside this venue right now.
Eventually, Korn added them to their Family Values tour. That was huge. Suddenly, Limp Bizkit had access to larger audiences. But the real turning point came when they released their cover of George Michael's Faith. It was unexpected, a little irreverent, and surprisingly catchy.
I was like, I don't want to do that song. I don't think that's cool to do a cover song on this. I want it just to be you guys, you know? And they're like, oh, no, man, people love it when we play it live. Everybody loves it so much. I'm like, all right, cool. And then the performance in the studio was so slamming. It was just like, geez, I don't know, like this mix of things, and I don't even know what it is. And it was just magically perfect for that song, and it was so freaking on fire, man. It's like, oh my God.
MTV loved the video, and suddenly the album began to move, eventually going gold and then platinum.
And we're just gonna put out Faith, and then all of a sudden it blew up because everybody could bond and understand it, and there was melody in it, and there was personality, and it was redigesting an old tune.
Suddenly, Limp Bizkit was rising next to Korn and Deftones.
So there was Korn and Deftones and us. And then we started getting a lot of coattail riding bands.
But for Wes, it was like being strapped to a rocket he wasn't entirely sure he wanted to be on.
So, but then it just hit, and we started doing.
You guys took off like crazy, man. Like it was just
took off like crazy, and I was just like, "What is happening?" I just remember my parents going like, "Remember, you need to have a backup plan," and I'm like, "Dad, I have a backup plan. It's fine."
I love those conversations with their parents who are very supportive, but they still are like, that it might not work.
Yeah, make sure that you have a backup plan, because what you're trying to do, people don't succeed in. And I'm like, I know, Dad, I know. But I remember them like more and more just going like, "Wow, son, this is like, seems like it's happening. This is wild."
Nookie dropped in 1999, and MTV got basically addicted to it and couldn't stop playing the video. The beat was unlike anything else in the metal scene. The chorus dug straight into your brain, and that guitar riff hit with this tight, punchy groove that made you replay it without thinking.
I think the root of the song we can all agree on, someone did me wrong and you stay with them or her or whatever, and you get your heart broken and you feel like an idiot, but you keep taking them back. It's like, it's this like endless cycle of like, oh my God, what the hell am I doing to myself? So
then they dropped Break Stuff.
Nookie and this one are my favorite ones so far, but it was just, it's headbanging, it's rap rock. That is what it is.
Wes found a way to make a riff that was super basic, yet super aggressive and catchy. Anytime they played the song live, the crowd went from excited to full on zombie apocalypse.
How many people here really like NSYNC?
And nowhere was that energy more obvious than at Woodstock 99.
It started with 3 bonfires and quickly got out of control. When the looting started, 500 state troopers dressed in riot gear moved in.
Let's go! Move it!
I've covered Woodstock 99 before, so here I'll just go straight to the point.
Looks like an absolute war zone inside here. I can't tell you. There are cars turned over, and it looks like military police are just patrolling the whole area. They just told us we have to leave.
The place was a mess. The whole festival was engineered to fail. People were cooked alive in the sun, out of water, fed on $15 hot dogs, and felt scammed by organizers who seemed allergic to basic planning.
You want the worst? Well, you got the worst. The one, the only, Limp Bizkit.
So by the time Limp Bizkit walked out and launched into Break Stuff, the crowd was already on the edge.
Like for Woodstock, for us, it was just like normal, like we were doing our show.
Fred did exactly what he was hired to do. and the crowd exploded, ripping up plywood and tearing the place apart.
We walked on stage, and it was that wave of people bouncing as far as you could see. Hundreds of thousands of people, and it was the most amazing adrenaline-pumping moment that I've ever experienced. I remember getting off the stage and having some policemen with my manager come around me and say, "Fred, I think you kind of incited a riot." They started ripping down buildings and the scaffolding, and that's the plywood you were surfing on. They were tearing down things, and there's people getting hurt. And I go, I didn't see any of that. Everybody I saw was having an amazing time.
How scary was it for you up there when they started ripping that place apart and they started taking the plywood off the towers and stuff?
God. Dude, it's not our fault. That's all I can say.
And just like that, the organizers had their perfect scapegoat for a festival they had already lost control of.
And also the way the media spun it, like, Woodstock's burning down, and that's us playing break stuff, and then the fires that happened the next day. They were like intercutting that footage together.
Right around the time of the Woodstock fallout, the band released Significant Other. The album immediately took off, debuting at #1 and selling more than 643,000 copies in its first week. This was the moment Limp Bizkit became the biggest band in America.
I remember, like, Limp Bizkit was like, just like culturally phenomenal level around that, like, turn of the century time. And it was angsty. And it was like, you captured that kind of, I'm just pissed and I'm gonna break shit and,
Just 1 year later, Chocolate Starfish and the hot dog flavored water blew past Significant Other and became one of the decade's best-selling rock albums. By now, Fred Durst was on MTV pretty much 24/7. He was also a playable character in video games, a regular guest at radio stations, and always featured on some magazine cover. Limp Bizkit became the poster boys of nu metal, loved by millions of kids, but hated by almost every critic. But while Durst loved pop culture and fame and liked the attention from the haters, Wes was off in his own world.
Are you the more sort of alternative guy?
I guess I guess you could say that. Like Fred likes really, a lot of, what would I say he likes? He really loves hip hop, and he loves to listen to a lot of, a lot of stuff like that. He likes a lot more, modern-y stuff and a lot more popular stuff. Whereas I'm always listening to like noise bands and the complete like indie rock and
excellent. It's good. It's
stuff
good
like
that you have that in there, mixing it into the group.
On stage, he wasn't just another guitarist thrashing in sync with the beat. He was a spectacle unto himself, looking like some fucking demon that has nothing in common with the rest of the band. He didn't look like he was there to party. He looked like he'd clawed his way out of a fever dream, armed with a 7-string guitar. And the contrast between him and Durst was sharp. One flirted with Christina Aguilera, while the other focused on theater costumes. Durst was center stage, rapping about doing it all for the nookie, with a red Yankees cap glued to his dome. And Wes was a black hole in the spotlight, pulling attention without asking for it, a silent demon stomping through the chaos with surgical precision. Theirs was a symbiotic chaos, but they looked like they didn't even belong to the same universe. And as the band got bigger, the backlash grew with it. The media painted Limp Bizkit as the symbols of dumb, aggressive bro culture. Other artists, for different reasons, jumped in on the hate wagon as well.
We will cover and we will kill you!
We're bitchy because Limp Bizkit's doing better than we are.
Look, I'm not gonna say Limp Bizkit sucks, you know it, I know it. I'm not gonna say it.
Like Maynard from Tool just completely like shit canned us in this article and compared us to like McDonald's said like we're like Tool is like fine dining, Limp Bizkit is like McDonald's, basically. Like, and that's why
harsh. That's a little harsh. Like
Wes, who was actually a thoughtful, artsy guy, felt more and more disconnected from the band's identity.
Every day I wake up, I feel like maybe I wonder if today's the last day I'll be doing music. Like, I just never know.
Plus, he didn't like being lumped in with the whole nu metal thing.
I don't really feel, I get called nu metal, I don't really feel a connection to like Linkin Park or Papa Roach or any of the bands or POD that feel like nu metal to me.
Right.
I feel like we were before them and are kind of separated from them, but I also am not upset by it. It's, you know, it is what it is. Like,
it's worth noting that over the years, even Limp Bizkit's harshest critics gave Wes his due. They might have trashed the band, but they almost always admitted he was a damn original guitar player. Some even considered him the only talented element in the group.
You're often called the only noteworthy musician in Limp Bizkit. How do you see this part of your career today?
I think that's not a correct assumption of the band, because I see the other guys in Limp Bizkit as being incredibly talented musicians, and you know, they're my brothers. So I've grown up around them, and I know that that's not a true statement. I mean, I appreciate that I'm, you know, given that much respect and well-renowned, but I don't agree.
But the breaking point for Wes was the Big Day Out Festival in 2001 in Australia. Yet another event that was clearly understaffed.
We kept telling them every day, we're like, this is getting more and more dangerous. They were like, we've had Rage Against the Machine. This is not a big deal.
Wiser from the Woodstock fiasco, Limp Bizkit had tried to warn the organizers that the barricades and crowd setup weren't safe, but the show went on anyway.
So the barricade, you know, every security guard's hanging on the barricade, pushing forward. And it's like, there's 80,000 people out there.
Yeah,
You're not going to fight 80,000 people. But people kept going down. We stopped playing like 5 times and just had to take a break and go, please stop.
Tragically, during their set, a 16-year-old girl was crushed in the mosh pit.
She was 16 years old. Her name was Jessica McKellich, and she went into a coma, and then we left the tour and went back home, and I got the call like 2 days later that she had died in the hospital.
Once again, the media blamed the band, and the organizers dodged responsibility, but by then, Wes was done.
For me, that was it. I was like, I don't want to, not that it was our fault, but I don't want to be part of, I don't want to be part of a force where something like this can happen.
So he quit the band. In October 2001, when he was only 26, Wes Borland quit Limp Bizkit. Officially, he cited creative differences with Durst, a polite way of saying he was fed up.
Some of what Limp Bizkit was, I liked, but the stuff that I didn't like, about the music was so much that it was like, I couldn't listen to those songs. I couldn't listen to our records, and I couldn't really be proud of what I was doing and stand completely behind it.
Free to fully express himself, he dove headfirst into any project that interested him, no matter how small or strange.
Big Dumb Face, prepare to die.
First up was Big Dumb Face. If Limp Bizkit was too mainstream or commercial, Big Dumb Face was the antidote. A zany, experimental metal freak-out influenced by Ween and Mr. Bungle. Its debut album, Duke Lion Fights the Terror. was a tongue-in-cheek barrage of guttural vocals, goofy lyrics, and absurd genre hopping. Critics were mostly baffled, but the album gained a cult following for its "so stupid it's genius" vibe. It was clear Borland was intentionally distancing himself from the slick nu metal sound. This album was basically him saying, "Fuck you! I'm gonna have fun and make the most insane music I can."
It's been really humbling and good to come back to clubs, and it's felt like home, to come back and play these places that, that we grew up playing. And
at one point, Durst pulled a wildly invasive stunt. He publicly shared Borland's personal email address and urged fans to flood his inbox, demanding that he return to the band. It was framed like a rallying cry, as if a tidal wave of fan pressure would snap Wes back into the fold. Instead, it backfired hard. Borland was already feeling burnout, disillusioned with the band's direction, and desperate for distance. Then he got spammed by thousands of rabid fans telling him he did the right thing in distancing himself from Durst. Not only did the move feel manipulative, desperate, and tone-deaf from Durst, but fans actually confirmed to Wes he did the right thing by quitting. Meanwhile, he attempted to form a more serious band called Eat the Day with his brother Scott.
On this keyboard workstation over here, I named a file, Eat the Day, that just, real quickly, was programming something and then was just like, Eat the Day, that's what that's called. And my brother was like, when we were thinking of names, he was like, what about Eat the Day, that file name? And I was like, okay, that kind of works. And it's not intentionally like a seize the day type of thing, but it kind of worked in with the whole, me taking control of my life.
This was envisioned as a progressive hard rock band, but finding a singer proved disastrous. Borland held open auditions, but nothing felt right.
It's hard for people to understand that this same group of people that did the absurdity that was in Big Dumb Face is going to produce a record that is not like.
Months turned into years, and by mid-2003, Borland abandoned the project. That same year, he also dabbled in a supergroup called The Damning Well. This project had big names: Richard Patrick of Filter, Josh Freese of 9 Inch Nails, and Danny Lohner. They recorded some music for the Underworld soundtrack, but the band fizzled out after that, leaving Borland still searching for a post-Bizkit identity. It was a humbling time, going from playing arenas to not having a band at all.
I think that when people are given endless options, they end up spreading themselves thin by exploring.
By late 2004, the unthinkable happened. Wes rejoined Limp Bizkit. By then, it had been 3 years since he'd walked away from the band to launch a solo career around the freedom to be weird on his own terms. But Big Dumb Face felt more like a passion project. And Eat the Day and The Damning Well died without even releasing an album. Being an avant-garde outsider wasn't paying the bills, but playing the guitar in Limp Bizkit certainly did. And despite the circus around the band, there was no denying the chemistry he had with that group when things clicked.
I'd say you're right. Limp Bizkit has a particular DNA, an individual DNA, as we all do, and once that's tampered with, it's just not the same anymore, for better or for worse.
Without Wes, Limp Bizkit seemed to have lost part of their unique DNA. The band's only album without him, Results May Vary, was panned by critics and fans alike. Although in my opinion the album is very underrated and Creamer is easily in my top 10 Bizkit songs of all time. If it had been launched as Fred's solo album instead of a Limp Bizkit one, perhaps the public would have received it differently. Regardless, behind the scenes, the band knew they needed Wes. And Wes, consciously or not, might have needed closure. A chance to return on his own terms, to see if things could be different. So he came back. And in 2005, they dropped The Unquestionable Truth Part 1, a surprise EP that veered hard into darker, more aggressive territory. Reviews were mixed, with most critics claiming this was Limp Bizkit's attempt to cosplay as Rage Against the Machine. It was raw, paranoid, almost political in tone, and musically more jagged and abrasive. But Borland's influence was undeniable. Weird tunings, gritty textures, and strange song structures that clearly weren't built for radio. And for a moment, it even looked like they might pull off a reinvention. But behind the scenes, Fred was still a visionary driven by his own vision, while Wes was still an artsy musician who didn't want to compromise his artistic integrity. Creative disagreements turned personal, and the vibe soured quickly. So in 2006, when MySpace was the social media battlefield at the moment, fans watched in real time as Fred and Wes traded passive-aggressive blog posts, thinly veiled jabs, and barely coded takedowns. Until eventually, Wes posted that the band was pretty much done, and made it clear he had no interest in continuing the charade. So he quit the band again, this time not behind closed doors, but broadcast to millions of followers online.
You know, tastes change and, you know, goals change, and you can't stay. If you're not interested in something, there's no reason to stay in it. I think that people should always reinvent themselves and not be a slave to their fears of not succeeding in whatever they wish for, whatever they think they can do. I think it's a mistake to stick to something because it's easy.
Borland channeled that turbulent energy into a new project that would finally stick, Black Light Burns. Initially formed in 2005, Black Light Burns was the band Wes had always wanted, an industrial-tinged, dark alternative rock outfit where he took center stage as lead vocalist, guitarist, and primary songwriter. He teamed up with Danny Lohner and a rotating cast of players, effectively repurposing the aborted Damning Well material into something that felt finished. In 2007, they released Cruel Melody, a brooding experimental album that revealed a whole new side of Borland. Here was the man who quit Limp Bizkit to play some goofy shit, now delivering intense, atmospheric songs. And the reception was overwhelmingly positive.
Yeah, I mean, Cruel Melody, still to this day, everyone that I talk to just gives me they have so much so many amazing things to say about that record and what it did for their lives and stuff like that. So to everyone, thank you. And
in 2008, seemingly out of the blue, he joined Marilyn Manson's band. On paper, this seemed like a promising match of outcasts.
I'd already been a fan of Manson, so I think being a fan of the band previously had already had an effect on my playing.
But within months, Borland bailed. Apparently, at some point, Wes realized that Manson's world had no room for Borland's input, so he quit.
During the 8 months that I was involved with Manson, I only played 2 shows and then spent a lot of time sitting around in a studio, not writing.
So, Black Light Burns became Borland's primary focus, and he used it as a vehicle to express himself and explore new music landscapes, even releasing a cover album in 2008.
I know you guys did a cover album not very long after Cruel Melody came out.
Yeah, it sounds terrible. We did it with like some people who were not the best, and
I really love that album.
It was very like haphazard the way we did it, but I still have like a little soft spot in my heart for it. But it's called Cover Your Heart. Some of the songs are terrible. Some of them I really love. The Sisters of Mercy cover, Lucretia My Reflection, I think was one of the ones that we ended up playing live a lot that people really seemed to enjoy and liked. We got a lot of like, we like your version better than the original, which I was like, thank you so much.
Oh yeah.
I just try to stay true to myself and listen to my inner voice.
But the Bizkit door never stayed closed for long. In 2009, Borland rejoined Limp Bizkit again. After years of distance and public feuds, the band announced they were officially back together, claiming they'd buried old grudges and were ready for a fresh chapter.
How did this reunion come to sorts? How did it take place?
We had tried to do a bunch of different things, broken up, and to kind of make a long story short, our manager, the guy that signed Limp Bizkit, had put out volleys of phone calls to us over the years, trying to get us to at least talk again and be in the same room. And the last one that he put out in 2008 actually got Fred and I together for whiskeys, and I think we realized that we had grown up a lot and both knew how to speak each other's language a little bit better.
So you guys gonna be rocking?
Whether it was reconciliation, unfinished business, or just a financial move, Borland was back for good.
It was pretty much, we tried to get along without each other for a long time and settled our differences with a friendly get-together. And we had a little whiskey and we had a little chat and grew up, realized we'd kind of grown up a lot, I'd say.
The group hit the European festival circuit, proving they could still draw massive crowds.
We're about to go in the studio in a couple weeks and record our new album, and we feel very, very confident about that, and it's a very exciting time for Limp Bizkit fans and for Limp Bizkit. We feel that it's now or never.
That momentum led to Gold Cobra in 2011. This one sounded like original Limp Bizkit, and it felt like the entire band was winking through the distortion, fully aware of the absurd theater they were putting on. But the reception was mid. Gold Cobra sold modestly and quickly faded from the spotlight. And while touring with Limp Bizkit gave him money, Borland kept using blacklight burns as his most sincere creative outlet.
I'll always be remembered for Limp Bizkit, but Blacklight Burns is it's more me than Limp Bizkit is in many ways.
In 2012, Blacklight Burns dropped The Moment You Realize You're Going to Fall, a grimy industrial rock record soaked in paranoia.
So I wanted all the elements that I liked of Cruel Melody without the things that sounded like another band or sounded not like myself. So there was sort of this pre-writing editing process where I went, I'm not going to do all these things that I did on the first record. And I'm really going to push into these areas, that sound wilder and, and try to make mistakes, try to not make everything perfect, and try to keep a lot of mistakes.
In 2013 came Lotus Island, a surreal instrumental companion piece that sounded more like a film score than a rock album.
Well, I will say that the fourth Blacklight Burns record is called Lotus Island, and it's an alternative soundtrack to a movie from the 70s called The Holy Mountain, which is a cult sort of following movie by a director named Alejandro Jodorowsky. If you start Lotus Island, the fourth Blacklight Burns record, and The Holy Mountain at the same time, I basically did a second alternate score to the first third of the movie. Anyway, check it out. The Holy Mountain by Alejandro Jodorowsky.
And while Blacklight Burns never cracked the mainstream, that wasn't the point. This was a way for Borland to feel creatively satisfied in a way that Limp Bizkit, for all its money, never quite gave him.
Blacklight is it's a pet project that doesn't really afford me a living, whereas Limp Bizkit affords me to be able to play music. And being in Bizkit, I'm able to do Blacklight Burns. I don't know if I'd even be able to do it if I was, had a career change and was working in a different job or something like that. So, it's lovely to be able to do both. And I think they're really apples and oranges as far as comparing, because the levels are so vastly different.
In 2016, Borland released Crystal Machete, his first solo album under his own name. It was entirely instrumental and deliberately void of the elements people expected from him. No distorted guitars, no screaming, no nu metal at all. Instead, Crystal Machete was a cinematic, synth-heavy journey, like the soundtrack to an 80s film that never existed. Critics were impressed by its beautiful, atmospheric soundscapes, praising Borland for yet again reinventing himself. Big Dumb Face returned in 2017, bringing back his absurd heavy metal comedy, probably to balance things out after the seriousness of Crystal Machete. By now, his reputation had evolved from ex-Limp Bizkit guy to that insanely creative dude who can do anything, including painting.
But like with your paintings are insane. They're incredible. I have a Wes Borland original, by the way. Do you? I do.
My ADHD is so bad that it was so funny. Allie said the other day, she goes, if you were in any job besides the one you're in, you'd kill yourself. She was like, you wouldn't be able to do it. There's no way you'd ever be in the corporate world.
No.
She was like, she's like, can't imagine you. But it works for what I do. But I also can like hyper focus where I can go for hours and work on one thing. And there's a feeling you get when you do that that people call flow, like flow state, where you just sort of, everything is amplified and your concentration is amplified. And at the end of the day, I feel like I accomplished something instead of just going like, I sat around and rotted all day.
When you look back at Wes Borland's career, you see someone who just followed his instincts. He moved between massive mainstream success, weird-ass art projects, and a bunch of dead ends. Most people know him as Limp Bizkit's guitarist, and that came with real upsides. He traveled the world playing rock music in front of huge crowds and lived a life most of us never will. But the fame also boxed him in. Even so, Wes brought a distinct visual style and a freaky creative spark to nu metal, a genre that did not usually reward either. Then he walked away to keep his integrity, and he kept creating anyway. No audience needed. Recently, both Big Dumb Face and Bizkit dropped new material, proving that somehow Wes can still come up with new ideas. Now, he has made peace with the split identity. The arena guitarist and the strange art kid both live in the same body, and he is done apologizing for it. In the pantheon of guitar heroes, Borland's name might not come up next to Hendrix or Van Halen, but make no mistake, he's a fucking guitar genius. And he showed a generation of heavy musicians that you could be heavy and artful, brutal and goofy, all at once. Without Borland, a whole lot of kids in the late 90s might never have picked up an instrument or a paintbrush. He made it okay to be an artsy freak in a world of alpha males. Wes Borland's story is ultimately one of staying true to yourself in an industry built on hype and fakery.
You've been treated like shit.
He tasted the excess and decided his soul meant more, so he blew it all up, then rebuilt himself as the artist he always wanted to be. Sure, he's had his struggles, but through all the misadventures, Borland's dedication to creativity never wavered. Even at his lowest, he kept pushing his art forward, painting canvases in his home studio while the world wondered whatever the hell happened to the ex-Limp Bizkit guy. Today, he's both a nostalgia act and a forward-thinking artist. He'll play a festival with Bizkit for the millennials reliving their youth, then turn around and drop an experimental solo record online with zero fanfare just because he felt like it.
I hate it. It's so loud.
What are you working on, sir?
Giving away the next stage costume.
Really?
In an age where so many rock stars burn out or fade away, Wes Borland has managed to stay relevant by essentially not caring about relevance at all. He's authentic to the point of absurdity.
Oh, there he is. What's going on, man?
And he's productive. The guy always has something cooking. Wes Borland showed that even in a loud, brutal, and often superficial world, the weird kids and the real creatives can still make their mark and find success in their own way.
I think to be known at all or to be remembered at all would be fantastic. You know, I am not a rock superstar in any way, and I won't be remembered probably for more than the lives of my offspring. It's the end. We're all gonna die.